Hey everyone, welcome to part 6 of my Blender tutorials. We're going to start off with a couple of things that I mentioned from the last tutorial. The first thing I talked about is rotating or rotation. So I'm going to hit Shift C to center. So the first thing I do is go to my side view, and before I do that, you see the little cross at the bottom here? It's usually not there. This panel is usually up, but for some reason it isn't right now. Now I'm going to hit Shift A, go to Circle. And you can see in the panel here, you can decide how many vertices you want. 32 is fine. You would change all this stuff before you hit Tab for the first time, or it's not going to. You won't have a chance after that. Okay, so I like that. I'm going to hit Tab. I'm going to go to vertices mode, and what I want to do is I want to select some of the bottom ones and hit size along the Z-axis, maybe grab along the Z-axis. Do the same for some of the top ones. It's really just kind of willy-nilly here. Now I want to go back to front view, and I'm going to hit grab and move it up along the Z-axis. So now if I rotate sideways, you can see the cursor still there, and I have moved this up somewhat. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to hit Tab to go into edit mode, hit A to select all of the vertices. Now if you go up here, you have some interesting options, and one of them is spin. If you click spin right now, what it does is it spins it around the cursor. Now let's say I wanted to make this a tire. So the first thing I would have to do is, you see the degrees here, I'll just left click with my mouse and scroll along, and you can see I can go all the way up to 360. But it's looking a little jagged, and we can get rid of some of that with subsurf, but the other thing we can do is we can click the steps. And you can add as many steps as you want until you're kind of happy with how it looks. So that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to hit Tab, and as you can see I have somewhat of a tire. I'm going to go back into Tab, back into edit mode, select all. We'll go down here and do the smooth, so that looks a little nicer. But one of the problems is, and one of the things I talked about last time is, we have vertices that are overlapping each other. These vertices need to be melted together because they're not attached to each other. So the way that we do that is with remove doubles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight them all. First turn this back off so I can actually highlight them all. So I'm going to highlight them all. That's why I always rotate around when I do a highlight, to make sure that it got everything. I'm going to go back down here to remove doubles, and we'll keep an eye on it up here. Actually, I have to move this back to info. Keep an eye on it up here, and it'll show you how many doubles it actually removed. So I click the button, and it says remove 32 vertices, which is exactly how many are in the circle. And now it's actually part of the vertices are fused together and they're not overlapping each other. Now I'm going to go back and undo that for a second. Okay, so I backed out with Ctrl-Z, so now you can see that the vertices aren't meshed. I'm going to go up to the Add modifier. I'll do Subdivision Surface, do 1. And now you see when I hit Tab, there's this line here. That line is there because these vertices aren't melted or fused together, or whatever term you want to use. So now you can see with the line there, that's no good. So if I do this, I hit remove doubles, which will basically force them to be meshed together. Again, 32 vertices removed, and I hit Tab, it's gone now. Looks perfect. If you're wondering what this line is, it's actually an issue that you see on anytime you do subsurf, where what are called normals, which is the way the face of the each of the individual faces is pointing, has to be realigned. Anyway, the way that you do that is you hit Control-N, you select everything on the screen with A, hit Control-N, and now if I hit Tab, you can see that that's actually gone. And so you see I made a pretty decent tire just using rotate. There's it's called spin, actually. There's another one called screw. You can see tutorials on it. I don't use it quite as much, but spin I use all the time. And like I said, you can make dinner plates, or you can make anything you like. You basically just hit Shift C to center your cursor, add whatever it is you want to do a spin on, move it up so as far away from the cursor as you need to. So if I'll do Shift D to duplicate this. I'll grab it down the Z-axis. I'll size it down. I'm getting along the Z-axis. Now if I hit spin, I just get a nice smaller version of it. So be careful about where you place things, but essentially you can use it to make all kinds of cool rings and plates and tires and you'll find various other uses for it. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the magnet tool. Magnet tool's really handy. Let me just create a cube here. I'll duplicate it. Magnet tool's right here, and you have the ability to decide what you want to snap to. So we always leave it on increment so that when we rotate and the size and stuff, we can hold down Control and get the get the increments of 5 or 10%. But for this, I'm going to switch it over to vertex for a second. Turn on the magnet. Now what happens when I grab? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my arrow close to this corner and hit G. And you can see when it gets close to the corner, it snaps right to it like a magnet. Now if I switch this to edge and I do a grab, you see it finds the edge, and you can actually move it up or down along the edge. You can do the same thing for face. This comes in handy for a few reasons. If you have meshes that you want to mesh together, and I showed last time how you can sort of size them all towards the cursor. Well, this is obviously another way to do it. If I decided to get rid of the face here, get rid of the face here, and I wanted to make these two things connected perfectly to each other, go back to vertex, do a grab, boom, that's it. Another thing you can use it for is to make sure you have accurate distance between objects if they're not distanced far enough apart, or you want them spaced exactly right. This can be a little tricky, especially with more complicated meshes, but sometimes what I'll do is with the magnet tool on, I'll go to vertex and I'll grab this and I'll move that there, and I'll grab this and I'll move it there. Now that I'm happy with that, I'll grab this, move it here, grab this, move it there, and now these three objects are spaced perfectly apart. So that's another thing I use the magnet tool for. I'm sure you'll come up with lots of ways to use it. Just remember that it's there. I'm going to shut it off, move this back to increment.